Fertilizer markets are at a bit of a crossroads right now. Despite price signals pointing to exports, flows haven't materialized. India is back in the market with aggressive buying, and the ongoing disruption in the Strait of Hormuz continues to cloud the outlook. So, what's really driving these dynamics, and where do we go from here? I'm Johanna Bota, and joining us to help make sense of it all is Josh Linville, VP of Fertilizer at StoneX. Welcome back, Josh, and thank you for joining us. Last time we spoke, NOLA Urea was trading at a discount to global prices, and we thought that that might trigger some exports. So why haven't we seen that happen?
Yeah, this is going to be one of the biggest questions we have for spring of 2026. And listen, my fingers have started to cramp. I'm saying this so much. When I talk about Nola Urea, I talk about it being cheap,
Hmm.
right? And there's nothing cheap about it. That's something I'll tell you. You talk about trigger words. That's something that can trigger a lot of farmers out there because they look at the price of nitrogen overall and they say, "There's nothing cheap about it. How
Hmm.
could you possibly be seeing this?" But when you look at it in context of the rest of the world,
Of course.
Nola Urea prices have been a massive discount to those Middle East value chains. And typically this time of year, we're at 10, 20, 30, $40 a ton premium to that value chain. We are triple digits cheaper than that today.
Yeah.
And that's been the big question. Why aren't these exports happening when they very much should be? Every free market indication says people ought to either be diverting vessels back to some place like India, or they ought to be loading up barges of product onto a vessel and exporting it from the North American marketplace.
So
And
then
the
why?
only thing that, yeah, I was gonna say, it ultimately comes down to the only thing I can really come up with is fear.
Hmm.
Fear of the Trump administration. For the first time that I can remember, the presidential administration is actually focusing on fertilizer. They're talking a lot about it. They're actually going after some of these companies. You see what they've said about some of these nitrogen phosphate manufacturing companies. It's gloves off. They are not holding back. And I think there's a lot of people in the marketplace who might be sitting there saying, we could be exporting this. We could probably make a really good amount of
Hmm.
money doing this, but it ain't worth the target on our back. It's not worth the spotlight being shown on us. We'd rather pass up this opportunity, just get through the spring season, get to summer, let's reset it and restart from July 1, the start of the fertilizer year,
Hmm.
then take this profitable opportunity. It's the only thing I can come up with as far as why this isn't happening. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like our prices cheap. I love our prices being
Hmm.
cheap. It's just a head scratcher when you sit back and you look at it from a free market standpoint and
Yeah.
say, X should be happening. Y is actually happening. That's where we're at today.
All right. So let's move over to India. They ultimately secured around 2.5 million tons of urea at a much higher price, almost double what they paid 2 months ago. And they are now back in the market with new phosphate tenders, 1.2 million tons of DAP and 400,000 tons of TSP. What is going on there?
Yeah, I thought for once we were going to be able to go a week without talking about India. I
Hmm.
really thought we had a chance, and here we are. So, yeah, they wrapped up the urea purchase tender. They did a fantastic job. And actually, it was a piece of cake as far as getting the tons.
Yeah.
Not a single offer in line of the expanding or higher offers said no. So they very quickly got to their 2.5 million ton goal. So that thing is done. LOI is issued. They've purchased the tons. Everybody can move on from a urea since. However, then they were right back out again. And to your point, this is a massive phosphate tender. This is what's really, really scared me. Globally speaking, we've all been focused on nitrogen with the Strait of
Yes.
Hormuz.
Hmm.
Phosphate's in worse shape. China's not exporting. U.S. production rates are low. Saudi Arabia is stuck behind the strait and trickling tons to the West Coast ports to export. And then you talk about the lack of anhydrous, the lack of sulfur that's getting through there, and how that's driving up global prices. Now all of a sudden, at least that the market forces have been keeping that down. Farmers struggling, the lack of willingness to pay the higher prices.
Hmm.
Well, now you enter India into the mix of it, and they're not looking for a small amount, right? 1.2 million of DAP, 400,000 tons of triple superphosphate is no small amount of tons as on the world level, and they're using government money. The same thing that happened on urea, where the prices skyrocketed. Fully expect the same thing to happen here. And I understand that India's backed into a corner. They can try to piecemeal it, buy it vessel by vessel by vessel.
Hmm.
But it was a year or two ago we learned that lesson. That didn't work out well for them. Every time they bought a vessel, the market moved up 10, 15, $20 a ton.
Right.
And prices had doubled by the time they got done. So now they're going to take the approach of we'll just try and buy a huge block at the one time. The issue is, are they going to get anywhere close to those tons?
Well,
Right
they
now,
had
I'd
no
tell you
problem with urea, but I mean, they're also paying higher prices though. So will the same thing happen
yeah,
with phosphate?
more than likely, because if you own phosphate today in the world market and you see India step into the marketplace for the 1.2 million ton of DAP, and you know this is being backed by government subsidies,
You're going to sell it.
why do you need to be cheap?
Yeah.
Why do you need to go in and be aggressive with your price? And in fact, chances are you're going to sit there and say, if my price is X, I want to be X plus 30, plus 50, plus 75,
Right.
because chances are I'm going to get a chance to sell this anyway. I don't want to be the lowest one offering. So we'll see how it plays out. One interesting point this morning, just before I jumped on,
Mm-hmm.
it's been reported that they are actually delaying the offer period. They've extended it a little bit longer.
Interesting.
That's that's very interesting. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of makes you wonder why. Are there parties that just need a little bit more time to get their offers put together to figure out what their production rates are, what their offtakes are going to be, or do they see something we don't?
Yeah, maybe
Does
they're
the India
just waiting.
government, well, maybe they're looking at the strait and saying, hey, if we extend this another week, we think that there's a chance this peace actually starts to happen, vessel traffic starts up, and this would actually be good for us. So we need to buy. But if we can extend this a little bit longer, we think there's peace coming in the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not saying that's the case. This is
Yeah.
speculation on my part, but that's something we're watching. They may see something the rest of us don't.
And one last thing, Josh. If the strait were to reopen today, so humor me here, okay? A lot of that fertilizer would be arriving after peak spring demand. So where do you see the loaded tons actually go?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer. So the last time Quan ran through the information, all the data, he was able to figure out there's just about 1 million ton of urea that's sitting on ships behind the strait.
Okay.
Now, this isn't really on a world scale a lot of tons when we're in the middle of spring,
Hmm.
when we're in the middle of peak demand period. If this thing had opened a few weeks ago, I guarantee you they would not have had a problem figuring out where to go with these tons.
Right.
But now all of a sudden, we're about in May. Most spring seasons are done. There's no way those tons, even if it opens right now as we're talking, that those tons can reach most of the world demand in time for their application season.
Hmm.
If it opens here fairly soon, that means these tons are going to be injected in the world market looking for somewhere to go. And everybody else in the world is going to be throwing their hands up and saying, I don't want it anymore.
I don't need it.
Oh, these tons are supposed to go to Australia. I don't need it. Oh, these tons are supposed to go to the US. I don't need it. So it's going to be interesting. So now that we've kind of moved past this hurdle, and we're entering into kind of that summer demand slow time. If the strait does reopen, you're obviously going to have the bearishness of the fact the strait is reopened, things are normalizing. But now you're going to have this glut of nearly 1 million tons of urea that's going to be like, okay, I need to go somewhere and I need to go somewhere now because I've been sitting here for weeks, well, I guess we could say months.
Hmm.
I need to go somewhere. Where am I going? Everybody's going to say, not here. So that could add a lot more bearishness to the marketplace, at least on the spot level. I
And
hope we need something to help out.
now, excuse my lack of knowledge here, but could possibly people buy the fertilizer and just store it just in case another war breaks out for their fall planting season? Wouldn't that be a good strategy from the
Yeah,
farmers?
they could, but the problem is most of your nitrogen application for urea isn't until the springtime. Now, there are places like South America, things like that, where they will need it, but take Australia. They only put urea on the field one time of year. There's
Right.
only
So
one
they'd have to
season there,
keep it for a whole year, basically, is what you're
and it's a
saying.
limited, yeah, and a limited amount of storage. They can't sit there and hold it. I mean, obviously, there can become quality issues with the product. It's been sitting in a boat for a long time, and
Already,
then it's
yeah.
going to sit in a warehouse for a long time. There will be places that will need product. Don't get me wrong, but the bulk of your demand, once we get past basically now, is a very, very long way off.
So obviously that's with urea in spring planting season. When are we when should we be really scared of the strait not opening? So obviously fall planting season's coming sometime in November, I would think. When do you need to get that fertilizer into the US? By what date?
Typically, now through, let's just say May, maybe early June, the market's going to focus on the spring season. It's going to focus on finishing up applications,
Right.
on planting, on spraying, and things like that. And then we'll shift forward. July 1 is the start of the fertilizer year for the US and for a lot of the world. And that's typically that crossover point from, the year before to the year after.
Hmm.
That's not to sit there and say some products like potash may not come out early and hydros may come out early with the program. But typically speaking, a lot of that buying doesn't have to happen until July, August. Now, the further away you are from supply points, the bigger that you are, you do need to start earlier, because there is that worry that if I wait too long, I won't be able to get it all in time. It takes a while for the process to move, but we've got time on our side. Now, if we go a couple more months and the strait is still closed, yeah, we've got so much bigger problems globally speaking. Yeah, it'd be a tough situation. I mean, it's not just North America, it'd be South America. The world is going to be impacted.
Right. Josh, thank you as always for all your insights. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.